For the past 3 months, the Pregnancy Care Centre has looked more like a distribution warehouse than a resource centre. Stacks of baby boxes, hampers, and meals to be distributed to families in need have replaced the space for clients in our reception area. When COVID hit, prenatal, financial literacy, baby's first year, Mother Goose, and fatherhood classes transitioned to an online platform, and our large classroom evolved into a sorting area. Toiletries, baby items, maternity clothes, food, and gift cards were placed in packages for families and mothers-to-be. In partnership with Camp Evergreen, Dalhousie Community, and Centre Street Churches, the Meals for Mums program was established. Each meal package contained enough to feed 2 adults for 5 meals. Volunteers and staff delivered each carefully curated package. At a time when a trip to the grocery store was stressful, diapers, formula, and baby clothes were out of stock, and what was challenging before became almost insurmountable, these packages represented tangible ways we could respond to the COVID crisis. Thank you to the individuals, families, and church communities for making this work possible. Your gifts made a difference in the lives of the most vulnerable. In fact, you fed over 700 meals to struggling families and provided crucial necessities to more than 100 moms and their children throughout this crisis. Thank you. This work is only possible because of your concern for the most vulnerable.
My name is Cliff Weeb, and I'm the Community Development Specialist at the Pregnancy Care Centre. Meals for Mums came about not through our own planning, but we got a call from Camp Evergreen, and they were making frozen meals to sell because of COVID, and they had nobody at the camp. And so they said to us, we don't just want to sell meals and make money off of them, we also want to give some away kind of as their tithe. And so they gave me a call and asked if we could use them at the center. I asked the client services team about this, and they said absolutely. And so then one thing led to another, and we started identifying moms who needed meals and delivering them all over the city. And so we got some donors and some donations, and we started cooking meals right here in this very kitchen at Dalhousie Community Church. Client services decided that the meals would go to moms who were just having babies, and so they would give them 3 weeks of meals, as well as moms who definitely were in poverty and in need. From when we started in April until when we finished in June, early July, we delivered 860 meals. One of my favorite stories came from our manager out in Strathmore, Drinda. And she said that one time she went to deliver a meal package to a mom, and the mom came out and she just burst into tears because she was going through so much in her life. And Drinda said, I can't give her a hug during COVID, even though she wanted to. So she said, I social distanced a little ways away, just sat down in the front yard, and we had a long talk. And I think the meals just opened up a lot of conversations that our volunteers or our staff could have with these moms. Even more than just, calling and checking up. If you are able to deliver something or help them in some physical way, it just really creates an openness to talk more. We had developed a relationship with Centre Street Church, and they had received quite a bit of funding from the government to help people in need in Calgary around food security. And it was a seamless transition from when we ran out of money and the food ran out here, and they ramped up their program at Centre Street Church. And so moms who were getting meals just kept getting them, and they will continue to get them all the way until Christmas time, because they're planning to run this program all the way to Christmas.
Usually that's just such a great example of the way that the centre just rose to the challenge of completely unexpected circumstances, making it up as you go along, but meeting people's needs. It's fabulous, fabulous. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. We're going to be spending about half an hour this evening listening to stories from clients, stories from staff, hearing about the work of the Pregnancy Care Centre. Most of the time we're also going to have a chance to be talking with Jutta Whitmire, the Executive Director of the Centre. I've got some questions for her, but also I'd like to encourage you to send in your own questions. There's a text number that's going to be scrolling across the bottom of the screen that you can use. but also use the comments and facilities on Facebook or YouTube, depending on where you're watching from this. I was thinking, Yuta, that when you and I last met together was at the last year's Fall Fundraiser at the Red and White Club, and we sat there blissfully unaware of what was heading our way, having no sense that the world was going to be utterly changing, and that for pretty much all of us, the world was going to be turning upside down. But it struck me as I was thinking about that's probably true also for the vast majority of your clients. They're people who had no idea of what was heading their way and found their worlds being turned upside down. And so the centre had to not only cope with the unexpected developments that they were living through, and that sense of everything being turned upside down gives us at least a little bit of an idea of what it's like to walk in the shoes of some of your clients. So we're going to be hearing some stories, and we're going to be having some chats. This is the Fall Fundraiser, and there are going to be quite a few different ways to donate. I'm going to ask you, if you can, to hold off until the end when you've heard the stories, because we'll be talking about the whole giving process at that point. But if for some reason you can't stay on until the end, or you're not going to be watching the broadcast till later, that text to donate number is one of the ways that you can give, and we'll talk about others in due course. So Yuta, we last met in October 2019. Things were looking, I think, pretty positive before the unexpected hit. So why don't you tell people what the plans were like for the Centre for 2020, and then what actually happened?
Yeah. Well, 2020, our plans were pretty optimistic. Our theme last year was, if you remember, holding space and moving forward. And we were doing just that. We had just opened our new centre in Airdrie, and we had hired additional staff and expanded the hours in Strathmore because of the growth there. We had grown several new programs, and the Take Charge program had grown enough that were looking at hiring someone to help with that program to support the increased demand. And we were exploring new and innovative ways to train our volunteers efficiently, because we had more volunteers as well, which was exciting for us. And we were planning the spring fundraisers. So everything was moving forward. I was thrilled with the opportunities that I had gotten and we had to speak about the centre's work and to connect and collaborate with other agencies. We were also exploring, looking and wrestling with a possible name change to better explain the breadth of what we do.
Yes, I remember being involved in the conversations with that. So things are going along fairly well, and then COVID hits. So what happened? How do you react to something that is so out of the blue? You can't prepare for something like that. So what did you do?
Yeah. Well, we first heard the word pandemic, and we didn't panic. We started to put some things in place to be more careful, do some sanitizing, and then I will never forget the weekend. It was actually the 15th of March, and I had spoken to my son, who is a doctor, and he said it's no longer in just travel related, it's in the community. And he suggested closing our centre down for at least 2 weeks until we knew what we were dealing with. And so with consultation with the board, I made the plan to close the centre. And then on the Monday morning, all the staff were there, and we started putting our plans in place. Little did I know that was the last time we would be together for months, until the middle of July.
So Yuta, here you are facing the completely unexpected, unprecedented in our lifetime. I'm sure people watching are going to be interested to know, for someone like you, as you cope with the completely unexpected, what kind of plans do you put in place? What kind of priorities? How do you start?
Well, client safety and connection is always our first priority, so that was clearly first. And then connecting with our volunteers, secondly. Communicating with donors was our third priority, and communications plans had to be put in place really quickly, and jobs assigned. So we grabbed our desktops and laptops to take home for those of us who are going to be working at home, and Zoom became our constant meeting place. The learning curve was steep, especially for some of us.
I'll bet. No, it strikes me listening to you talk that the role of leadership here is really important, because it's a question of deciding what the priorities are, assigning and getting things moving. And I think one of the stories that we're going to hear from is Laura, who's the Director of Client Services, talking in part about what her year has been like so far. So let's hear from Laura.
I see a lot of clients as well as I supervise the client services team. I also am connected with different agencies within the city, building partnerships, connecting with donors and volunteers, and just supporting our staff team as best as I can. I would definitely say my experience as a mom has affected my work here at the agency 100%. Early on in my pregnancy, I did struggle with postpartum anxiety and depression, and I had a C-section, so it was really isolating. I wasn't able to leave my house, similar to the situation that we're experiencing now. So it has allowed me to, again, reflect on the questions that I needed people to ask me, and that I did have people to ask me that led me to getting help from my doctor. But things like, how are you doing? How's your attachment with your child? How are you feeling as a mom and as an individual? So I think I just approach my practice now from a place that I just want to be honest, and I want to hear how people are actually doing. And I'm excited for people who are really flourishing in their role as a mom, but also I'm here and I'm willing to embrace the parts that are really challenging. We've seen a huge rise in domestic violence, as well as issues and concerns with mental health. Even rates of suicide have climbed since COVID has began. So it was really imperative that we are connecting with our clients even before they reach out for us. I think sometimes our clients were surprised when we'd call and just say, hey, like, we're thinking about you, how are you doing? Because I think in this age, there's lots of times people are busy. So when someone receives a phone call, just checking in, I think it was really meaningful for them to know that we are here. And I always finish my conversations and counseling appointments with just a, hey, if you ever need us, make sure that you're reaching out. We're here to support you. We have been able to reach out to clients again and check in and see how they're doing and offer them things that we originally didn't have before COVID. So our meal program, our clothing room shut down, but we were still willing to make boxes of clothing, and maybe it's not as ideal as being able to pick out your own stuff, but people are just so grateful and thankful that we're able to offer these things even though COVID has kind of shut down the world. It's been wonderful. We've gotten great feedback, and a lot of people have said things like, you guys have gone, like, you've really like made this period easier on my family, easier on me as a mom. I feel supported by you. So it's been overwhelming really how much positive feedback we've gotten back, and it's probably what's keeping us going. Our staff team has done an amazing job, and I feel extremely proud to be a part of this team. All areas of our center have really been working around the clock, and we have volunteers who are taking the phones throughout the night. Staff who are off hours are texting with clients to make sure that they're safe. And so it just feels like in this time where things are shutting down, our center has really opened up, and it's been so encouraging, and I love being a part of this team.
Now, Yuta, what strikes me listening to that is that at a time when so many other agencies were closing around you, that the centre not only kept going, but actually succeeded in kicking it up a notch to meet a phenomenal need.
Well, we knew we've got a very small staff, and so we knew that we could not properly care for our clients without the support of our volunteers. So that quickly became a priority. I am still amazed at how the team pivoted to meet the needs. Volunteers set up in their homes, and in fact home offices, for client contact and sessions. Despite the building being closed, we were still open to clients 24/7 through phone, Zoom, and text, thanks to our volunteers.
So Yuta, what kind of things were the volunteers doing?
Well, volunteers did, as usual, most of the work of the center. Volunteers delivered meals. What was really exciting for me was that we had, in about a 2-day period, about 50 donors that contacted me personally and asked how they could help. And many of them became volunteers during that time and delivered packages and meals to our clients. We had volunteers come in and sort the wonderful donations we received during that time, socially distanced appropriately, of course.
Right.
And they packed packages, and they actually cleaned out our rooms downstairs so that we could actually give away all the goods that we have.
Very neat. Very neat. I remember the very first conversation you and I had years ago about the centre was about the crucial importance of the volunteers here and how it really couldn't be done without I think it's about 200 people who volunteered in the course of the last year. And I think one of the things we've done is to put together a bit of a video showing comments from some of the volunteers about what it's been like for them working with and for the centre in the course of this very unexpected year.
My name is Victoria. I was part of doing the very first online prenatal class.
My name is Shauna, and I'm currently a volunteer with the Strathmore Pregnancy Care Center.
My name's Carol. I started out as a prenatal instructor. Most recently, I'm a client support person.
My name's Joanne Hunt, and I am a volunteer with Client Services.
My name is Joanne Duwachi. I work for Legacy Kitchens, and we deliver meals to the Calgary Pregnancy Care Center in Strathmore.
My name is Sharon Vanderbergt, and at the moment I teach the financial literacy course.
My name is Crystal, and I do a variety of things around here at the center. Here in Strathmore, we all pretty much do lots of stuff.
My name is Elia Pigue Somi Lamai. I teach prenatal classes at the Pregnancy Care Center.
I wanted to talk to women who had limited support and see what I could do to help them out.
I'm a doctor, a medical doctor. I was working in women's health. So moving to Canada, I had to go to school, and I really wanted to get back to helping out pregnant women.
I worked as a teacher for many years, and I was coming up to 60 and thought, well, it's probably time to move on and do something a little different. Now, I was an adopted child as an infant. It was a way of giving a thank you to my birth mother. I did, in my heart, want to thank her for just giving me that opportunity to have a really good life and a really happy and fulfilled life.
So I was a single parent for about 3 or 4 years, and also a very young mom. I was 19 when I had my first baby. And so that has always played on my heart, and I've always wanted to work with young women because I went through the struggles.
I have personally faced unplanned pregnancy, and I've also experienced the crushing aftermath of an abortion decision. And I find that women who come to us for help with their post-abortion grief are very deeply comforted by the fact that I have also walked a mile in their shoes.
I felt that pregnant women and their partners in this season were just facing so much uncertainty. It was really awesome to be part of just giving them practical information that could help them feel empowered.
So it was basically get on the phone, start contacting people, letting them know that we're here.
It's been very interesting doing Zoom meetings. So I was doing Zoom meetings with baby's first year.
At the beginning, I did helpline once a week. I also delivered some meals to a client and clothing to them when they couldn't come in. We just sort of covered whatever needs that they had.
I handled incoming calls so that freed up staff members at the center to be able to do other things. I would speak to clients and ascertain what their various needs were and then figure out how we could best help them.
Once COVID hit, I felt even more empathy for the women reaching out for help because I deeply suspected that many, many of these women were suffering in isolation.
It was really cool to just kind of combine my worlds as a postpartum public health nurse, and now then teaching a prenatal class, just to kind of bring those two together.
By the time we got to week 5, and on our break, I left my video on, I ran to get a coffee, I'd come back and I'd allow for that 10 or 15 minute break, but a lot of people would engage just on the personal level, which by week 5, we had actually created some relationships, and I really, really missed not seeing my clients the following week.
They were very happy. Often they were quite thankful that despite the pandemic, we kept the class going.
Churches throughout the city really stepped up, and they'd set up a lot of different supply centers around the city for people to access. So we were able to connect people with that kind of service. We found that people were extremely grateful. It was just a real good time of people coming together and caring together in an atmosphere where things had become very negative, very stressed.
I got to meet with people that not necessarily would have been able to come into the center, so that they actually were able to reach out when they needed to reach out rather than not being able to gather that support.
When we started making deliveries, like when people needed diapers or those meals for mums, and that I was able to just go and deliver some of the stuff. So we got to, wave at our clients through the window, which was amazing. You could just see the big smile on their face too. Or if it was nice day, they'd stand on the porch and I'd stand down below. And I had one client that her dad passed away over this COVID. So I was able to help her with that, not just with the babies, but also with trying to walk her through her grief. I got a feeling of a different connection with my clients, a stronger one.
We have actually had quite an influx of women reaching out for help.
I feel like people just need to go out there, step out, because you think it's very small. It's as small as like, oh, we're just going to go there and drop off meals. We're going to go pick up meals and deliver. You're actually blessing people. You're changing lives. You're a part of someone's story that you don't even know.
All the people at this time who really did step up to the plate to help people whose faces they couldn't see. They didn't hear the stories of the individuals coming across our phone lines. They made a huge, huge difference in people's lives. So thank you.
What strikes me listening to that wonderful set of stories from the volunteers is an awful lot of people seem to find their sense of purpose in what they're doing at the centre, and it's as if the way that the volunteers stepped up was what enabled the centre to rise to the challenge of COVID.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without the volunteers. Typically, in the months before COVID, we'd see about 150 volunteer hours a month. During COVID, we saw about 150 to 180 volunteer hours per week. It was phenomenal.
That's wonderful. And as usual, the volunteers obviously have a key role to play in things like hampers and deliveries and so on. But one of the other important aspects of the work at the centre is the classes that get run that help to address the needs of the whole family. So what happens to the classes in the middle of all this chaos?
Well, one of the things we realized very quickly because of we were communicating a lot with our clients through this process. And we realized that our clients were especially isolated, many of them, and were needing education and community. And so online classes was the obvious and probably only solution that we could go to. We started with prenatal classes, and our wonderful team of instructors just stepped up, and we were able to fill that immediate need. That was our first need. Childbirth is a challenging process at the best of times. And for our clients, many of those giving birth with all the unknowns of COVID, for them it was terrifying.
So there's understandably an absolute need to keep going on the prenatal classes given the circumstances in which this is happening. But what about the rest of the classes?
Well, to date, all our classes are running virtually. And we have not only got all our classes, but we've added some more as we saw some other needs. It has been critical for our clients to have this connection, and they have been incredibly appreciative. Staff and volunteers have worked really diligently to facilitate this, and Deborah's story is one of the ones that showcases the values of these classes.
Well, thank you, Yuta. We're going to hear Deborah's story now as we talk about the education work of the centre, and we're going to be hearing from staff, from volunteers and from clients. So let's hear Deborah's story.
My name is Erica and I'm the Client Services Coordinator. I started here right before COVID started. So I transitioned the classes into an online format, and I think the thing that's really stood out to me during this whole process is that even though we're not supposed to be together physically, we can still create community between our clients through our classes online.
My name is Amanda, and my most recent role at the center is facilitating a course called Active Parenting. The course material itself is excellent, that I find everyone is benefiting.
My name is Deborah. I have a son that is 5 years old, and I have been part of the center since I was pregnant, probably 5-6 years ago. I was very happy when they told me that they're gonna take those classes through online, and I got a lot of new ideas too that I started to implement already.
Being a mom is my absolute favorite job, but I don't think that often we get celebrated, that we have people coming alongside us, and I just really wanted to serve as a support system and build a community. I think the greatest impact that we made was to bring community to people in their homes, to give them a chance to share about their day, to give them a chance to share about their concerns as their kids were going into school in the fall with all the changes, and to just let them be heard in a season that can be really lonely.
I really enjoy that aspect of classes, is the community that we create for moms and for parents. I know that after having a baby, it's hard to find that community, but if you attend a class, it's easier to meet other moms who are in the same stage of life.
They make me feel that I'm not alone. And chatting with other people and sharing your thoughts, your ideas, that's huge. For sure, guys, keep doing what you do. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've been in the center for 5 or 6 years. That is not bad news. There is no one thing that I can say, well, maybe they should improve this one or should that one. No, it's always like perfect. Anytime you guys need me, I am always there because you're always there for me.
So, Yuta, I loved what Deborah said about the centre always having been there for her. And that's a great example of, in the middle of this unexpected environment, that the centre was able to adapt and to use new technology and to continue to be there for people. But I'm sure one of the things that people will be wondering, especially many of them who've been to this office here, is with everything happening virtually, is this place now empty, and what happens here?
Well, obviously we couldn't do everything virtually. 2 of us stayed working in the office throughout, and all of our job descriptions changed to do whatever needs doing next. We found a way to distribute pregnancy tests and to do follow-up over the phone even. So our classrooms and boardrooms became a distribution center for the material goods that now were critical to our clients. I've become an expert in packing boxes and bags. Volunteers have come in regularly. They've been isolating appropriately, of course, but they've been giving us hours of time, packing goods by themselves, sorting clothes by themselves. It's been pretty amazing.
So Yuta, one of the things that I think will be of interest to people watching is that many of them will have volunteered, they'll help put the packages together, they'll see the packages going out to clients. But what's the impact at the client end, at the receiving end of all of this?
Yeah, so if you remember what it was like, there was huge shortages of goods, and many of our clients either had small children at home or were pregnant and sort of ending their pregnancy and could not get out. Can imagine being on the bus with small children or highly pregnant. So one of our clients, for instance, had to stay at home because she had some health concerns and she was nearing the end of her pregnancy. And she called me in a panic, and she said she had sent her friends out to try to locate some goods for her newborn, and there was nothing in the stores. She couldn't get onesies, she couldn't get diapers. And we were able to fill that need. And we weren't just able to fill that need for her, we were able to do that for many clients.
And one of the things that you were saying to me was that it was little short of miraculous.
Yeah.
To see the way that things would be asked for that you didn't have, and then they would somehow show up.
Yeah,
and there's this strong sense of God at work in the middle of all of this.
Absolutely. We would have requests. The volunteers would be phoning the clients and sending requests to those of us who were here, and we'd look and we know we wouldn't have something that was really critical for a client. And honestly, we saw day after day those things would show up just when we needed them, and we would be able to fill the box.
And seeing that God's work at hand time after time after time, I think gives a sense of confidence moving forward. But there must have been some things that you were worried about as well.
Well, Peter, there were lots of things I was worried about. But one of the things I really feared was losing our long-standing Take Charge program. The schools were all closed, and I thought the program might be lost. But I'm pleased to tell you, because we have kept in contact with all our teachers, and we have been able to connect with youth groups and parent groups. We have been invited to speak again in the schools, and we are currently almost too busy for the staff person that handles that. And so that's been really exciting, because that was a huge fear for me.
Yes, I know that it's a really important program at the sort of front end of all of this process. So I think it's very neat that in the middle of all of this that you've been able to get that not only going but going strongly. We talked earlier though about other agencies, some of the other agencies closing or struggling. Funding clearly a big issue for many agencies. Talk a bit more, if you would, about the nature of your collaboration with other agencies.
Well, Calgary is actually very rich in resources, and a lot of the community agencies had funding cuts and grant cuts and were not able to get the finances and had to close some programs. So we actually have seen an increase in need with our clients as well. What I think this has brought about, and this is kind of the good news, is that agencies are realizing that we have to collaborate and we have to support each other. And I've just seen a huge growth in collaboration and networking among the agencies,
Right.
and that's been really exciting for me.
And from a management point of view and efficient use of resources point of view, that's good news. But one of the things that struck me is that in the end, this is about people, and it's about agencies being able to work together well to help people. And we're going to hear a story now about one of the ways in which agencies collaborating together has been able to help people.
As well as being the volunteer coordinator, I also have a client caseload. Here at the center, there is rarely a dull moment. And really my experiences run the gamut. There are themes, I suppose, but every experience is very unique with every client. Specifically, I have seen a real increase in individuals experiencing homelessness, but also most definitely I've seen an increase in those experiencing domestic violence and in those really suffering with mental illness. One example I can think of specifically is a young lady who, right at the beginning of COVID, contacted the center because she had moved to Ontario because she wanted to work the home show there. Right after she arrived, the home show was canceled due to COVID. She realized that she had to come back right away and she had nowhere to stay here in Calgary. She'd given up her accommodations. All of her plans just instantly fell apart and there was a real moment of panic and a real feeling of crisis in her life. Obviously, due to COVID-19, we were also experiencing a shortage of accessible housing. So she called the center. What are we going to do? What am I going to do? Thankfully, one of the shelters had access to some extra government funding. So they were able to get her into a shelter and then help support her and get her into her own place. Another example, we had a young lady call the center fairly early in the morning. She's very early on in her pregnancy, but was being pressured by her partner to have an abortion, and her partner became abusive because she was refusing to have an abortion. She grabbed a few belongings that she could, grabbed a taxi and came into the center. And although we were closed at the time, we got to work trying to find her a place to go. Because of COVID-19 and because of domestic violence increasing, because people have lost their jobs and now they're taking it out on the people that they're living with and quarantining with, it became clear that there were no beds. There were no shelter beds for me to send her to. With some support from Alberta Works, we were able to find a space at Rocky Mountain House, which is 2.5 hours away from Calgary, and able to send her in a taxi to a safe place, specifically for those experiencing domestic violence as well, for her to stay in a shelter for a couple of days. I hope first and foremost that when clients come into the center, they're feeling valued, they're feeling safe, and they're feeling like when they come here, they just instantly know that there is hope, that we love them, we care for them, and also that there's a way forward. You've never hit a wall entirely and there's nowhere else to go. There's always, always, always a way through, and that they're not going to have to walk it alone. They're going to have somebody beside them saying, you can do this, I'm here with you, and it'll get better and we'll get there together.
Jutta, watching that story causes me to reflect. You'll have seen that on the video stories that we've got that saying of if not us, then who? And there's a couple of ways you could look at that, but as other agencies are closing and it's getting harder to find stuff, then that question of if not us, then who becomes a real practical, urgent question.
I think that's the question I asked myself the day that Lori was talking about, because I was here as well. And the young woman came here because she had nowhere else to go, even though we were closed physically. And we spent all day on the phone with other agencies and all looking for a place for her. And we finally were able to get her to safety at 7 o'clock at night. That's when she left the center. So who would have been there if we hadn't been there, because she was literally at risk.
One of the other things that I'm hearing is that as the pandemic grinds on, that one of the increasing challenges is not only physical health and physical provision, but mental health as well. Is that starting to show up increasingly in the work here at the centre?
Yeah, I think what we're all seeing is the client situations are getting more and more difficult. There is an increase, if you're watching the news at all, you know that there's an increase in depression, there's an increase in anxiety, there's an increase in suicide actually. And for our clients who are already isolated and alone, it's often even more of an issue.
And on top of all of that, with the recent news about yet more layoffs as we head into the long winter of the second wave and so on, presumably money's becoming more of an issue for many of your clients as well.
Yeah, many of our clients are already in, what we would consider a level of poverty. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're seeing also is that fear and uncertainty about the future is definitely having a huge impact.
Yep. And people can cope with many things, but uncertainty is a really hard thing to cope with. And so the centre being here to help guide people through whatever challenges the pregnancy presents seems to me to be really important.
Yes, Peter, we're here to support our clients and as they navigate through the challenges related to an unexpected or unanticipated pregnancy. But also the women who've experienced the grief and loss after an abortion need to know that there are people still here to listen and that they are not alone. And so we've been able to continue with one-to-one and group on Zoom for the women who have experienced the grief of an abortion as well. The other thing that I've noted, which has been very interesting, that more of our clients and their partners are considering adoption as an option, as the challenges of the future seem almost overwhelming.
It strikes me, Uta, that precisely because the future can seem so overwhelming, that it's really important that the centre continues to be a place where people feel it's open, that they're accepted, that they can be heard, that they can be helped to work through their choices. And in the middle of all this turbulence, that's such a vital role. And one of the stories that we're going to hear now from Cordelia is about the way in which the centre was able to help in a number of those different ways. So let's hear Cordelia's story.
When I signed on with the pregnancy care center, it was all neutral ground, just talking about, the future and just the pros and cons to whatever decision that I would make. The issues that his family and I had was they were just trying to bully me into getting an abortion. So that's why when I went to the clinic for the third time, and I still couldn't even go through with it because I would have panic attacks because of the last abortion. It literally traumatized me. When I finally made the decision that I was gonna keep my baby, with how my ex and his family were being, mentally they weren't healthy for me to keep communicating with.
I really told her that at this point in time, you have chosen to parent this child and you are going to carry this baby to term. So let's put up these boundaries. At this point, for the next 9 months, you just need to focus on yourself and focus on keeping yourself healthy.
She got me into prenatal classes, so that was super beneficial. And then she also got me in contact with a family lawyer as well, just with regards to the trust issues that I now have with my ex. She also helps me kind of get some baby things together and organized. Yeah, she's just helped me with a lot of stuff. It's amazing.
Through accessing the center, encouraging her, she has blossomed into this person with a lot of self-confidence. I see her as a mom, just loving her little boy, and she's such a great mom.
I love being a mom, and he's just a blessing, and I'm just happy that I made the right decision in keeping him.
This is the type of work that makes me excited about what our center is doing. We get to see these women come in and feel really defeated and almost stuck, but she has come so far, and it's so encouraging.
The center not only like helped me mentally prepare and, you know, in becoming like a mom and everything, but it just literally changed my life in ways that I can't even begin to explain. It was like my neutral ground, like my safe haven. And I'm just really, really grateful for everything that the center has done for me and my son.
Now, listening to Cordelia's story, it strikes me that many of us, not all, but many of us are blessed to have really tidy and well-ordered lives. But for those who haven't been similarly blessed, the centre is able to help with sort of layers of help. There's the mental help with things like confidence, like being heard, like having some feeling of an ability to move forward. There's the access to expertise with things like access to lawyers who are giving their help for free. There's the access to physical help, which is things like the clothing and supplies when people can find themselves in a situation where they have nothing. Throughout your 30 years, God has always provided.
He absolutely has. Because we have always provided solely on our donors and volunteers for support, we have been able during this time to keep and increase programming and client care, which to me is amazing. When many other agencies have had to cut programs, we have been able to do that, and that's really on our supporters and our volunteers. I've been a part of the center for a long time and have never been more encouraged by the sacrificial giving of all those who believe in making a difference in the lives of young families. I can look back and see the provision and the difference we have made together. I can look confidently into the uncertain future, knowing that the work will go on.
And so, as we move towards the end of this, what I wanted to do was to ask you to put the work of the centre in the context of the eternal. Because 2,000 years ago, Jesus stepped up to the speaking stand at a synagogue in Nazareth and quoted words from Isaiah when he talked about good news for the poor, freedom from the prisoners, freedom from being oppressed. And he was announcing the incoming of the kingdom of heaven. And that's what the centre's doing here. It's continuing that incoming tide of the kingdom of heaven. And what we've been hearing about today is about good news for the poor, freedom for the oppressed, freedom for the prisoners. And the work of the centre, of course, could not be done without the staff and the volunteers. But one of the themes that we've heard about tonight is, if not us, then who? And that us includes you. Because none of the work of this centre could be done without funds. It can't run on empty. So I'm going to ask you to pause for a minute before we look at things like the text number and the website for giving. And I want you to just silently and quietly ask God, what is it that you want of me? And if God gives you the same number as you originally had in mind, then that's fine. There's no pressure here. But what I want you to do is to say to God, out of the abundance that you have given me, what do you want me to give to help to continue the work of his kingdom here? So let's just pause for a moment. And now, across the screen, you're going to see details of a text number where you can give. You're going to see the website you can give, and you're also going to see a phone number. And those are all different ways in which you can financially support the work of the centre, as well as please your ongoing prayer support, because that's so important too. At the end of this, Yuta's going to be available on the phone to answer questions and to also respond to things that have come in via the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. But I want to thank you for joining us this evening. I want to thank you for your time, for your attention, for your care, for your support for people who have nowhere else to turn. That's so important. So thank you again. Please do prayerfully consider what level of financial support is appropriate for the centre in this current circumstance of continuing and deeper darkness. Thank you again for watching. Please do continue to pray. Good night.